Good evening, everyone. We're going to wait just another minute to give everyone a chance to come into our Zoom session or on YouTube.
Hi, Kristen. How are you? This is Laurel Oates from Legal Writing.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Annette Clark, and I'm very proud Dean of Seattle University School of Law. Welcome to our celebration of Professor Jeff Minetti, our William C. Oltman Professor of Teaching Excellence. In case you don't know, the law school appoints a new faculty member every 2 years to this position, the William. I was muted. Let me start again. I'm Annette Clark. I'm the proud Dean of Seattle University School of Law. Welcome to our evening of celebration of Professor Jeff Minetti, our William C. Oltman Professor of Teaching Excellence. In case you don't know, the law school every 2 years appoints a new faculty member to this position. And our past recipients are Professors Deborah Ahrens, Brooke Coleman, Mark Chinen, John Mitchell, and Sydney DeLong. I wanted to talk with you a little bit about the process we go through to select the next Oltman professor. I always have a small committee who assists me in making the selection. And this time around, the selection committee were Professors Mark Chinen, Maggie Chan, and Brooke Coleman. In terms of the criteria we use, this professorship was created to honor excellence in teaching and is named for Professor Emeritus William C. Oltman. He goes by Bill, my good friend Bill, who retired in 2008 after 34 years of outstanding teaching in the area of property and trusts and estates. As a member of our faculty, Professor Oltman demonstrated an unwavering commitment to teaching excellence, always demanding the best of himself, his students, and us as his colleagues. Bill is here this evening, and so I want to recognize and thank him for having been such a wonderful faculty member for so many years at Seattle U Law. We truly honor the best of the best when we name someone a William C. Oltman Professor of Teaching Excellence. So welcome, Bill, and thanks for being here. As I already mentioned, the recipient this time around is Professor Jeff Minetti, who is a tenured associate professor and the director of our acclaimed Academic Resource Center Academic Support Program, which includes our signature Access Admissions Program. As part of this professorship, the recipient gets to make a presentation related to education and teaching to the law school community, which of course is why we're gathered here this evening. One of our graduates has the honor of introducing Jeff as our next Oltman professor. But I wanted to just say that when we got together and talked about and discussed who should be the recipient, what we focused on in our discussion was Jeff's remarkable work ethic and generosity in sharing his deep teaching expertise and wisdom with his colleagues. And what we acknowledged is that we're all better teachers and a stronger institution because Jeff is with us. Let me now introduce Alex Romero, our graduate, who will then introduce Professor Minetti. Alex is a 2019 graduate of Seattle University School of Law and a holder of the prestigious Equal Justice Works Fellowship. Alex knew from the age of 10 that he wanted to be an immigration lawyer. His family had immigrated to the United States more than 25 years ago, and he saw and experienced firsthand the rights and privileges that were denied he and his family because of their lack of status. Thus, as a Latinx first-generation college student and the son of an immigrant family, migrant justice is more than just political for Alex. It is very personal. As an EJW fellow, he is working with the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project in its Wenatchee office, where he's providing direct legal representation and educational outreach to help and address the immediate legal needs of undocumented kids in rural Washington. Alex came to law school through our Access Admission program, and I know that Professor Minetti made a significant difference in his life. Alex, thank you so much for returning to your law school home tonight and for introducing Professor Minetti. Let me now turn this over to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Alex Romero. Like Dean Annette Clark mentioned, I'm an immigration attorney at the Northwest Immigrants' Rights Project and an Equal Justice Works Fellow sponsored anonymously. And like Dean Annette Clark said, I have the honor of introducing our award recipient tonight. Professor Minetti is a lot of things to a lot of people. As the director of the ARC program, he is that first law school professor and the foundation for ARC student success. As the recipient of the Amicus Award from the Seattle University Black Law Student Association, he is a support system to many students. As a professor, students described him as compassionate, patient, creative, brilliant, energetic, and authentic. However, I want to introduce Professor Minetti the way that I see him. What brought you to law school? This was the first question that Professor Minetti ever asked me directly. I first met Professor Minetti the summer of 2016 as the professor of my criminal law class. As a first-generation college graduate in my family, I had so much anxiety about my first day of law school. However, on my first day of law school, Professor Minetti created a space safe enough for me to cry in front of a room full of strangers as I tried to stumble my way through answering and explaining what brought me to law school. A couple weeks later, the tragic shooting at the Florida queer nightclub, The Pulse, took the lives of 49 individuals. Professor Minetti addressed this in class and mentioned how this tragedy affected him individually as he is part of the gay community. The moment our class ended, I walked up to him and asked him to be my mentor. I did not know what our mentorship would look like, but I knew I could learn a lot from him. He was my first openly gay professor I had ever had. As a queer Latinx first-generation college graduate, I knew that I would have many obstacles ahead of me, and I knew that I wanted him in my corner. Since my family was in Oregon and I had recently come out a few years back, I had no emotional pillars or queer mentors that I needed in adjusting to a new school, a new home state, and a new and rigorous lifestyle. Professor Minetti, being my mentor, was actually one of the best decisions I made in law school. We met almost every 3 to 4 weeks over coffee to unpack the daily drama that was my 1L, 2L, and 3L experience. During those casual and engaging coffee meetings, Professor Minetti fostered my professional development. Professor Minetti, being unapologetically out as a figure of authority in my life, gave me permission to bring my most authentic self in a way that I had never done before. It was in Professor Minetti that my worlds of queerness, professionalism, and religion finally intersected. Professor Minetti was my first voice of affirmation in the legal field that was willing to actively invest in me and in my success. He was the first lawyer that didn't just believe in my future success, but expected it. The support he exemplified was more than just an open door office hours policy. It was constantly checking in and creating accountability to my studies and to myself and my self-preservation. Professor Minetti saw something in me that I did not necessarily see in myself at first. He would speak to me as we were a team navigating law school and my professional development together. I am not only interested in answering what brought me to law school, I'm also interested in what kept me in law school. It was probably my mentor meetings at local cafes, the meaningful advice he offered, or the fact that I had someone in such a competitive environment looking out for me. Professor Minetti made me feel more than just chosen. He made me feel like I belonged. Professor Minetti taught me that self-sufficiency is a lie, that I need people, and it was ableist for me to think that I could succeed without community and mentorship. Professor Minetti is a lot of things to a lot of people. To me, he is a lifelong teacher, support system, a safe place, a mentor, and a dear friend. I would like to introduce Professor Minetti.
Okay, wow. Alex, I was moved to tears when you said those words. I'm an immigration attorney. Wow. I'm so proud of you and thank you for those words. So I've got some remarks. I've got some stuff to say tonight, and I decided to write it down so I might get it right. Thank you, Dean Clark, for your kind and generous introduction. I am deeply grateful for your leadership. You have entrusted the Academic Resource Center to my care, believing that I could continue its legacy of excellence and equip it and our students to face the challenges of today's learning environment. Your faith and belief in me have given me the confidence and the space to bring my authentic self and best efforts to each task I undertake and each relationship I cultivate. Alex, thank you for your kind words. I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to know you. I am a better teacher having worked with you. Seeing you today reminds me of your swearing-in ceremony last summer. We gathered via Zoom in a ceremony that Judge Galvan hosted, and your parents were among those present. As you took your oath, I watched the reaction of your parents, their pride in you, their love for you was so very present in that moment. What pure joy. Who you are and the work you are now able to do as a licensed attorney are why I do what I do. Thank you for being a part of this celebration today. Thank you for your kind remarks. Bill, I know Dean Clark acknowledged you a moment ago. I got to say some words though. A former classmate of yours tells me that you held students to a high standard with the expectation that students would be prepared and engaged. You used the Socratic method effectively to both test and challenge the students' knowledge of the material addressed in class and increase their understanding of the law. At the same time, you never used your questioning to demean students who were not able to respond to your questions. And while you demonstrated and expected academic rigor, you also had a sly sense of humor. What an honor to receive an award in your name, Bill. And I'm deeply grateful to the faculty member who nominated me for this award, and for those faculty who reviewed the nominations and recommended that I receive it. Given its impact on teaching well is critically important to me. I spent 24 years in education, 19 of them have been in legal education. To be recognized for excellence in teaching and to be called to stand among those who have previously received this award is humbling and frankly a bit overwhelming. Thank you. As my former students among us can attest, my teaching is far from perfect, but know this award and the accompanying recognition have renewed my passion to refine my teaching so that I may offer my students the best educational experience possible. There are a couple of other individuals in the gallery I'd like to recognize tonight. First is my partner, Brian, who along with my daughters, Anna and Ella, is present tonight. Brian, thank you for your abiding support of my work, which has kept me busy late into many nights and across many weekends. I love you, and I love that you love that I love what I do, and that I see my work as part of who I am. Each day as I begin my work, Brian tells me to fight the good fight, and so I do, grounded in his strong support. My son Josh also joins us tonight. Josh, I'm deeply proud of who you are, for what you've accomplished thus far in your life, and for where you're headed. Thanks for being here to share this evening with me tonight. Now, as we begin our gathering, I need to respectfully acknowledge that I speak to you from my office here at Seattle U, which is located on occupied Coast Salish land, and that Seattle University is on the homelands of the Duwamish people. I pay respect to the Coast Salish elders, past and present, and extend that respect to their descendants and all Indigenous people. To acknowledge this land is to recognize its longer history and our place in that history. It's to recognize that these lands and waters and their significance, the people who lived here and continue to live in this region, whose practices and spiritualities were and are tied to the land and the water, and whose lives continue to enrich and develop the relationship to the land, waters, and other inhabitants today. I also need to acknowledge the work of the exceptional work of the ARC team, because the ARC team's work is a significant part of why I've received this award. The students among us tonight are already aware of the impact that the ARC team has had on their legal education. Many have spent many hours with Megan. They know firsthand of the degree of care that Megan invests in each person she connects with. They've seen the creativity she brings to the relationship, her sense of humor, and the high expectations she sets for herself and her students. Others have met with Imran, who so easily connects with each person he meets. He has an amazing capacity to decode academic skills, making learning in law school accessible to all. And still others have had the great fortune to be in Isabel's classroom or to meet with her in her office. There, they found a tireless advocate who strives to provide the most effective learning environment possible for her students, who holds herself and her students to high but realistic standards, and who models the professionalism she seeks to nurture in her students and her colleagues. The faculty among us have also seen firsthand the good work of the ARC. Examples abound. Stephanie Tortorelli has provided expert assistance to us as we teach our classes and connect with our students. Isabel has engaged in empirical research that shed light on a variety of topics, including discerning the variables that impact our graduates' bar passage rates. Imran and Isabel have reported on the academic strengths and weaknesses of our graduates and recommended teaching strategies to better prepare our graduates for the bar exam. Megan has shared strategies for reaching and teaching struggling students, and she's shared materials with us that discuss how best to teach students with learning and attention deficit disabilities. Isabel, Megan, Imran, and Stephanie, thanks for sharing yourselves with our students and for all that you have done for the faculty. SU Law is a better place because of you. By the way, this evening, approximately 30 SU grads are halfway through the February bar exam. They're taking the exam remotely under unusual circumstances. Now, today they finished the writing portion, 6 essay questions, 2 performance tests. Tomorrow, they'll face 200 multiple choice questions. Please keep our bar takers in your thoughts tonight and tomorrow. And when you can, please thank Isabel and Imran for their work with the graduates over the last 2 months. Now, before I continue and get into my remarks, chat is enabled as are the participant buttons. If I say something tonight that you agree with, feel free to signal that agreement with a thumbs up or a note in the chat. Now, I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you. Can I get a thumbs up if you can see that screen? Yes, so far so good. Now, hopefully this screen will provide something for you to look at besides my talking head. Embedded within the screen are some polling questions that utilize Poll Everywhere. So if you have not yet linked up with Poll Everywhere, now is the time to do that. You can use the link that I think Professor Coleman put into the chat a bit ago, or follow the steps in the slide. You won't actually be able to register to connect with the presentation until I get to the first question, which will be in just a moment. But for now, see if you can work through these steps. And let me go ahead and advance to the next slide. We'll see how that goes. All right. So by this time, I hope that you're able to both connect with Poll Everywhere, and that if you have not yet registered, you're registering now. Doing so will give you the opportunity to join the presentation and then enter your response, because I'd like to know who's in the audience tonight. I'll be quiet for a moment and give you a chance to do that. All right, I'm not seeing any responses, which suggests to me that there may be a problem with connecting to the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and see if that doesn't make a difference. If it doesn't, I'll let it go. Huh. Okay. So it looks like I'm not going to be able to see your responses to the previous question, but it looks like you may have access to this one. So I won't be able to see who's in the audience. I could tell from the gallery, though, that it's a mixed presentation. Lots of current students, lots of former students, and lots of faculty as well. Thank you for joining me tonight. What I'd like to, let's see if this slide works better for you. What I'd like to begin with now is hearing from you about what 1 to 2 words best characterize your sense of legal education at Seattle U. Hopefully you can respond to this question and I'll be able to see your responses. Looks like the responses are slowing at this point. How amazing to watch this graphic change as folks are submitting the response. Student-centered came up big, went away for a bit, came back big. Look at the other words that stand out: inclusive, rigorous, enriching, community, caring. What a wonderful way to characterize who we are today. I'm curious now, I'm going to advance the slide. I'm going to advance the slide and take a look at this question. All right. I love what I saw on that previous slide about your perceptions of Seattle U today. I'm curious, though, if you could change something about Seattle U, what you might do, what that would be. If you can, let's see your responses to this question. Looks like the responses are beginning to slow a bit. I'm seeing among your responses about things that you might do differently, consistency with some of the things that I have to say tonight about this topic as well. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. I'm going to give us another moment or so for others to get their thoughts in. All right. I hope from those graphics now your mind is piqued with how you perceive Seattle U's education today and what it could become. I'm going to cover those basic topics tonight. I want to speak with you first about a definition of legal education, how we could define that term. Then we'll shift to my sense of what is happening here at Seattle U today, and we'll end with an idea of what legal education at Seattle U could become. So with respect to this definition, in their book, What the Best Law Teachers Do, Michael Hunter Schwartz, Gerald Hess, and Sophie Sparrow write that legal education produces legal learning. Legal learning involves intellectual development and personal development. Intellectual development includes mastery of core concepts and skills. Mastery requires long-term retention and the application of a deep nuanced understanding of concepts and skills. Concepts are the analytic frameworks of legal doctrines, rules, and policies, and the theories that support them. There are three categories of core skills: analytic, practice, and interactive. Analytic skills include critical reading, inductive thinking, deductive reasoning, and professional judgment. Practice skills include the ability to write legal document, and interactive skills include interviewing, counseling, negotiation, mediation, and trial practice. As I conceptualize intellectual development, I see it focused on our cognitive learning domain, which encompasses the extent to which we have assimilated information and the skills required for that assimilation. You may recall Bloom's taxonomy, which frames the task of assimilation from merely knowing about a thing, such as a legal rule, to being able to hold that rule up and critically evaluate the rule. In recent years, scholars have revised Bloom's taxonomy, converting the labels from noun to verbs and recasting the list as an inverted pyramid to reflect that higher order thinking actions, such as creating, evaluating, and analyzing, are a product of mastering lower order actions. If our assimilation goal is that students will engage in legal analysis, applying law to fact from multiple perspectives and evaluating which perspective is most likely to prevail, students must first recall the law, understand the law, have previously applied the law to other facts before they are ready to engage in what we would have them do with legal analysis. Now, the capacity to perform these taxonomy tasks requires the mastery of a set of cognitive learning skills that can be broken into academic skills and executive function skills. Much of the work of the ARC team is in helping students understand the cognitive tasks that their professors have asked them to perform and helping the students develop the academic and executive function skills necessary to perform the tasks. Schwartz, Hess, Sparrow write that the second general goal of legal learning is personal development. They write that personal development starts with self-awareness, a recognition of one's own strengths, weaknesses, biases, prejudices, and becomes transformative as students become aware of their capacity to know and do more than they thought possible, to know and do more than they thought possible. They become intellectually curious, intrinsically motivated, self-regulated learners who take responsibility for learning for themselves and take responsibility for their role in the community. I link the concept of personal development to a student's non-cognitive learning domain. The non-cognitive domain involves three components: mindsets, the social aspects of learning, and a set of academic behaviors. And tonight, I highlight mindsets. Now, mindsets are those psychological thought processes that are essential to intellectual development. Each is critical. Students need a sense of belonging, to know that they are welcomed, appreciated, and safe in their learning environment. Microaggressions, bias, stereotype, threat, and imposter syndrome cut against a student's sense of belonging, crippling the student's ability to perform cognitive tasks. A growth mindset recognizes that a student's ability, an individual's intellectual development, is not fixed by a particular IQ, LSAT, or GPA. Instead, our brains, even an adult aged brain like my own, is capable of intellectual development. Even as we gather here tonight, and I am speaking to you, our synapses are firing and new neural pathways are being constructed. Our schemata of legal learning in law school is being refined. A student who's realized the power of the growth mindset knows that there is no failure, only opportunities for success. Now, to be resilient in my judgment is to value struggle, and to confront and overcome difficulties without compromise to character or integrity. Self-determination theory frames wellness around competence, relatedness, and autonomy. Of these, I want to speak to autonomy for just a moment. Autonomy is a learner's sense of power over the learning task. It's the belief that the individual is engaged in something, in learning tasks that the individual has chosen to do, wants to do, and believes in doing. It is a powerful resonance. Who I am is well expressed in what I do. Recently, the California State Bar published a study acknowledging the psychological friction that arises when students worry about their ability, their potential, their sense of belonging, and their general stress. The bar noted that psychological friction can prevent students from achieving their potential by draining their executive functioning and cognitive resources, and as a result, lowering their persistence and performance. Now, in response, the California State Bar tested the impact of mindset intervention strategies, finding that the intervention strategies increased bar takers' probability of passing the exam by 9.6 percentage points. Among underrepresented minority bar takers, the program improved pass rates by 16 percentage points. Mindsets matter. This intellectual and personal development just doesn't magically happen, right? As professors, we are charged with creating learning environments where such learning can take place, assessing whether the learning has occurred, and then providing feedback about that learning to our students. Now, students, your role is to immerse yourself in the learning environment your professors have created, mastering the concepts and skills in that environment, and using the feedback provided to you to engage in the personal work that will lead to your transformation from layperson to law student to lawyer. This is an effortful enterprise, and given the fundamental role that lawyers play in American society, it is a critically important enterprise. With these foundational principles in mind, I turn to legal education, legal learning at Seattle U. And as I do so, I note that I've taught here for only 5.5 years, and I'm filtering everything I see through the lenses of my lived experiences and identities. I'm a white, male, middle-aged, gay, cisgendered male who has a lifelong interest in education. My perspective is informed by my work with students from orientation through bar preparation. Some students I work with are in my classes, but many are not. Now, recently, the law school's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee hosted rounds of listening circles. Each circle had fewer than 6 students. Most were moderated by Dean DiBiase, who joins us tonight. Other DEI members, the ARC team, and faculty from the Social Justice Leadership Committee served as note takers for the circles. Approximately 50 students participated, and in preparation for tonight's remarks, I have read and thought about the students' comments during the circles. I've also returned to the law school's learning outcomes, which the faculty adopted in 2017 after a deliberative process. Now, those outcomes do a fantastic job of framing the intellectual development that we seek to produce in our graduates and are consistent with our mission to prepare great lawyers who are powerful advocates of justice. I note that my faculty colleagues and I approach law teaching with great content area expertise, high energy, and infectious enthusiasm. As the pandemic forced us out of the physical classroom and into this Zoom-based environment, we adapted. And though I was away on paternity leave last spring, I watched as you faculty rallied together to share ideas and strategies for effective remote teaching. As the racial justice movement ignited last spring in Minneapolis and quickly spread to the streets of Seattle, students engaged with the Black Law Students Association, the Seattle Journal for Social Justice, and those who signed the Student Statement of Solidarity urged us, the law faculty, to recognize the continuing effects of racism at SU Law and to dismantle the systemic racism that distorts law teaching and learning in our community. And in a letter dated June 16, 2020, the faculty committed to doing so. But of course, signing a letter isn't easy. Signing a letter might be easy. Making good on the commitments in the letter is not. Even a cursory review of history reveals that this is not the first time that a racial reckoning has come to education. Time and time again, students' appeals for change have been met with empty or unfulfilled promises. Will this time be any different? For me, and for those in my sphere of influence, which by the way includes you since you're listening, hopefully still, this time will be different because it must be different. The work we do, this legal learning, equips students to play roles in our society that are central to our democracy. That this work is distorted by systemic racism and inequity is unacceptable. We can and we must do better. In her poem, The Hill We Climb, Amanda Gorman invited us to live up to our own time, to draw upon our power within, to realize that there is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it, brave enough to be it. James Baldwin tells us that the path to racial justice lies through confession and work. We must tell the truth about ourselves, what we have done and what we are doing. And then we must do the work necessary to dismantle structural and systemic racism and inequity. Having listened to our students and thought about our community, I share these truths at this pivotal moment in legal learning at Seattle U. First, and really most significantly, borrowing words again from Amanda Gorman, legal education at Seattle U is far from broken, but it is unfinished. Yes, we approach legal learning with great expertise in our content areas. We approach the task with high energy, enthusiasm, and empathy. Yes, we've done our best to apply our craft in a remote environment, sensitive to the challenges that students are facing as they strive to learn in the midst of a pandemic. Yes, we're crafting learning outcomes for our graduates. And yes, we've committed ourselves to addressing systemic racism and inequity. But that's not enough. Confessing truths. We know that our students' mindsets are critical to their personal development, to their success in law school, and to their success in law practice. You heard Alex speak to that tonight. But we've done too little to cultivate them. For example, we know that a sense of belonging is especially important for our diverse students, but too often these students suffer from stereotype threat, imposter syndrome, implicit biases, and macro and microaggressions that leave them feeling very much alone. They do not feel safe in our classrooms. They do not feel safe in Zoom rooms, especially not in breakout rooms or on our social media. Their lack of belonging and their absence of a sense of safety is impeding their learning. It's not enough to welcome all students, including Black students, gender non-conforming students, and disabled students to our learning community. We have a responsibility to create safe spaces for the students, spaces where they know they belong. We expect students to approach law study with a growth mindset and resilience, but we do little to cultivate either. Too many of our students believe that their capacity to learn law is defined by their LSAT score, their first-year GPA, their class rank, or their performance on our exams. They don't know that there is no limit to what they can do and know. They don't know that we believe they can meet the expectations and the outcomes that we've set for them. Our students struggle with resilience in part because we've not provided opportunities for them to see the benefits of tenacious, persistent, effortful learning in our classrooms. By the time they get meaningful feedback from us, the course is over and the value of that feedback is lost. If you're like me, you strongly value the degree of autonomy of faculty members you have in your own work. We are fortunate to be doing work that we've chosen to do, work that we want to do, and work that we believe in doing. Who we are as faculty members is well expressed in what we do. But we're failing to support our students' learning and our students' autonomy in their learning. We centralize the power in the learning relationship in ourselves, expecting students to fall in line like soldiers or robots. We know that building a work-life balance based on intrinsic motivators, such as curiosity and personal fulfillment, is essential to well-being. Yet so many of our messages to students focus on striving for extrinsic motivators, such as grades and class rank. Curiously, as important as personal development is to legal learning, you'd be hard-pressed to find any of our learning outcomes speaking directly to it. If we really believe that SU legal education is about legal learning, transformative legal learning, we must attend to students' personal development, to their non-cognitive learning domain, because that is where so much of the transformation from layperson to law student to lawyer occurs. In short, mindsets matter to students, so they must matter to us. Confessing truths. While our intellectual development is in a better place than our personal development work, it too is unfinished. Here are a few additional truths to ponder. Too often during class, we are avoiding having important conversations about racial justice and morality, even when the content naturally lends itself to such conversations. We say to ourselves, I'm already behind. I've got to catch up. I've got to cover that tested content. It's bar tested content. I just don't have time for that. As though to teach is to spray information out at the students and hope that some soaks in. I confess I've avoided such discussions in the past because they're messy. I worry that I might say something that offends someone, or that I'll fail to effectively facilitate the discussion, or that students will see me for who I really am, a guy who really hasn't figured it out, who's just fumbling about, trying not to be exposed as a hack. In short, I make my teaching about me. Don't do that. Okay, not done. Should have advanced. We strongly value autonomy in our own work. Whoop, now I'm really messed up. I'm going to go back a step. In short, I make my teaching about me, and now I'm back on page. Too often, we fail to clarify for students precisely what we want them to know and do. In our courses, if we craft learning objectives at all, we give little thought to the taxonomy of learning tasks. And if we give the taxonomy some thought, we do little to assess whether students have become proficient with lower order tasks before we expect them to perform at a higher level. Too often, we teach as though there's only one way to learn the material, the way we learned it. If we come from a background steeped in white privilege like I have, but our students don't, to assume that they will learn it as we learned it is wrong, if not reckless. People process information differently. Some need to see it as they hear it. Others need to see a more global view or macro view of a topic before they can understand a specific rule. Still, others need opportunities to speak about the content. Others need to solve problems with it before they can begin to understand it. Now, even given the weight of these truths, I am confident that legal education at Seattle U is not broken, but it is unfinished. And now I'm curious about your thoughts. What would you add to my assessment of legal learning at Seattle U? What truths have I not said that need to be said? If you're willing and able to do so, I'm going to advance the slide. And at this point, hopefully, you'll be able to add your thoughts to what I've said. Yeah. I like that. Resilience is a habit that can be built. Feedback has come up a number of times, a lot of times. Restricted by tradition is troubling. I appreciate your sharing your thoughts about the state of legal education today at Seattle U, and I hope that you're seeing that transition from legal education to legal learning. And it's interesting to me to hear some of the distinctions, or to see some of the distinctions of what you're saying now as compared to what you said at the top of the presentation. Already a transition is starting to take place there. But let's press on. Let's move to what it could be, casting a vision. What does finishing this work look like? What could legal learning at Seattle U look like? Here, I'm going to shift from confessing truths to casting a vision. I envision a learning environment where we, the faculty, do the work collectively and individually to ensure that our learning spaces are safe spaces, where our students' personal and intellectual development can thrive, where we I envision a learning environment where we regularly reflect on and refine the learning environments we create, asking questions such as, am I more focused on my teaching than students' learning? How can my learning space cultivate students' sense of belonging and reinforce a growth mindset? How well do I know my students? Can I pronounce their names? Do I know their pronouns? Have I framed learning objectives cognizant of the taxonomy of learning tasks for each lesson, excuse me? Have I discerned whether students have mastered lower order tasks before pressing them to perform higher order tasks? Have I clarified for students how I will know and how they can know whether they're achieving the learning objectives? Do I help students see the fruit of persistent, tenacious, effortful learning, leading to the development of resilience? Am I sensitive to my students' need for autonomy in their learning? I envision a learning community where we engage in anti-racist work. Each of us are on different paths, different points along the anti-racist path. But sitting here today, do you know where you are on that path? Do we see our next step? I know that this month I've benefited greatly from the ABA's 21-day Racial Equity Habit Building Challenge. If you're looking for a source to help you along that anti-racist path, check that site out, it's fantastic. I envision a learning community where we create classroom-specific guidelines that are inclusive of all students and emphasize personal dignity and interpersonal respect and provide a mechanism for addressing errors. In the learning circles, I heard about oops, ouch, a strategy that one faculty member employs, recognizes that sometimes people make mistakes, but they got to know how to get past them, right? We've got to help students understand in our learning spaces what steps they need to take to treat each other right and to correct themselves when they've made a mistake. I envision a learning community where we take time and make space for racial justice and equity discussions. It's not as simple as just naming a topic or picking out a particular case. It's us educating ourselves on how best to organically integrate racial justice and equity issues into our classrooms. It's about us educating ourselves on how best to facilitate racial justice and equity-oriented conversations in our learning spaces. And it's about learning from one another. Some of us are doing this really, really well, and we've got to learn from each other so that we can all do it just as well. I envision a learning community where we've created not just classroom-specific guidelines for treating each other, but community-wide guidelines that are inclusive and emphasize personal dignity and interpersonal respect and provide a mechanism for addressing errors. And the guidelines need to reach all of our shared spaces, physical and virtual. I envision a learning environment where we hire and retain diverse faculty and staff so that our diverse students can see themselves in us, even if that means we hire an individual early in that person's career. I envision a community that prioritizes wellness for ourselves and our law students. We are a community of human beings, not human doings. The pandemic has revealed and exacerbated mental health challenges in ourselves and our students. In a post-pandemic world, which can't come soon enough, those mental health challenges will not abate. We must model wellness by taking good care of ourselves, and we must advocate for mental health resources for our students so they can do the same. All right, I've been going at it for a few minutes. It's your turn. What's important to you? What would you add to my vision of legal learning at Seattle U? Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Wow. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Your thoughts, my thoughts coupled together create a pretty amazing vision for what Seattle U could become. It's unfinished, not broken. So this evening, I've shared with you my thoughts about the state of legal education, that is legal learning at Seattle U. And I've emphasized an approach to legal learning that is two-pronged. Our job to help students develop their personal and intellectual selves. I've confessed a truth, confessed a few truths and cast a vision. Now I offer an invitation to my faculty colleagues. Will you join me in refining this vision, drawing upon even the materials we received tonight and making that vision a reality? What are our next steps? Whoa. Okay, we're going here now. I'm about to wrap up my comments with you, and now I'm going to ask you a few reflective questions, and then I'll talk to you about next steps. So let's get this question in. As you listened tonight, or you saw remarks from your colleagues, classmates during the session, what's resonated? What might you take with you and remember tomorrow? Or what will you talk about after this presentation's done? What's resonated? Mm, mm, yeah. Powerful thoughts, and they just keep rolling in. It's amazing to read these, isn't it? All right, in the interest of that almighty time, I'm going to go ahead and advance the slide. I'm not really sure what's next. It could be my closing slides, or it could be another question. There's both out there. All right, it is another question, and this one goes to faculty, right? This is a little risky, but faculty colleagues in the gallery tonight, if I said something this evening or something you thought about as I spoke has led you to make a change in your learning environment, would you be so vulnerable to share that with the group tonight? It's okay if you're not comfortable doing so, but if you've got something to say here, I'd love to hear it. Mm. Hmm. Appreciate those that have shared responses, and they're still rolling in. Absolutely makes this time well spent. Give it another moment or so for other folks to get stuff in. Love it. All right, thank you for being so vulnerable to share those thoughts. See other things coming in. I'll be quiet for another moment. All right, going to advance. So legal learning at Seattle U. It's most definitely not broken, but it is unfinished. Now, there was supposed to be a slide on next steps, and I'm not seeing it here, so let me tell you a little bit about that. Faculty, Thursday at noon, we will be talking as a group about the summary of the students' comments from the listening circles that were conducted a couple of weeks back, and a set of recommendations that came out of those students' comments. I will ultimately be sharing all of that information with the students as well, those that participate in the circles. There is other good work happening through the DE&I committee, among the curriculum and pedagogy committee, and I am convinced that we can make into a reality the Seattle U that we've discussed tonight. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you to those that provided technical support, Brooke, Charlotte, Leanne, Lauren, Claudine. Appreciate all the time and effort you invested to make this be a worthwhile event for the folks tonight. And with that, I bid you farewell and good night.